The top prosecutor around here is in the house tonight. Lots of questions on Gordon Fox and more. Welcome to My State of Mind. I am Dan York. We will forego the rundown tonight because when you get quality time with a quality guest like Peter Neronha, it's important to maximize that quality time. I will tell you that I am perplexed over some of the things that happened in the state legislature last night, including but not limited to the Republicans who were here last night pulling the bill that they were talking about last night before we even got to talk about it last night, because we recorded in the late afternoon, and by the time that we aired, they had pulled the bill that they were so excited about. Hello, welcome to our collective Rhode Island state of mind. But we will follow up on that in the ensuing days and all of that. But U.S. Attorney Peter Neronha is my guest tonight. Headline, as if you couldn't remember or know, that is the former Speaker of the House who was sentenced to 36 months in prison. And here's a little bit of flavor from the day.
All right, thank you.
Moments after a judge agreed to a plea deal sentencing former House Speaker Gordon Fox to 3 years in prison, Fox leaves federal court apologizing to the people of Rhode Island. U.S. District Court Judge Mary Lisi ordered Fox to report to a prison on July 7th. The location isn't known yet, but she is recommending one close to Rhode Island. Fox has pleaded guilty to misusing campaign finance money and accepting a $52,500 bribe back in 2008 to secure Shark Bar in Providence a liquor license.
I got to tell you, a lot of people they don't believe that was the only bribe that was accepted. What do you say to them?
The government has looked at me and looked at me and looked at me, and I think the government would not be in the position of bringing this case to closure if that were not the case.
Tim White, thank you very much. Mr. U.S. Attorney, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Dan. Glad to be here.
It's good to see you after quite some time. The dynamic of this stuff is interesting. When you guys bring a charge, or when everyone is hunting around thinking there's something up, you're very close to the vest, very careful. Once you get a conviction like this, you loosen up a little bit.
Sure.
I find that to be interesting. Yet, if we probe what's next, all of a sudden you start to shut down again like a clam. So we'll watch the clam open and we'll watch the clam close tonight. But I'm honored to have you. I've always thought of you as a great public servant. And, the federal side's a little bit of a mystery to people still, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think that's why it's helpful to come on occasionally and talk about it a little bit. So fire away, and I'll do what I can to make it a little more open.
Well, listen, you answered some questions on Newsmakers the other day, and I don't want to have it be a repeat because Tim and Ted did a real good job in interrogating you, but there are a lot of people out there that don't believe this is all that Gordon Fox pulled. And so your reaction to that is?
Well, as I said the other day, as prosecutors, we focus on what we can find. And we really did do here a really exhaustive look at Speaker Fox's bank accounts and bank records in connection with this investigation. So if you remember, we went in on those search warrants in March of 14. And then we took a lot of time to put the case together, nearly a year. And that time was well spent by the agents and the prosecutors and some auditors that we have in the office to really pull apart the records we already had and the records we got as a result of those search warrants. And so we did an exhaustive look, and we weren't only looking for some things, we were looking for everything that we thought ought to attract our attention. That's how we found the Shark Bar bribe, was through that process. And it's not like that just jumped out at us. It said Shark Bar bribe. There was a payment that we couldn't understand or explain, and we had to track that down and talk to those witnesses and really uncover that. I can't say that Gordon Fox never did anything else in addition to what we charged. I don't know that it's fair just to assume that because of what he did. I'm not going to go there. I just focus on what we know. But what I do know is that what we found was sufficient to really accomplish what I thought was really important, which was to remove him from office. He was corrupt and he needed to be removed. And then to make him pay a penalty for that, and 3 years in prison, I think will do that.
The decision to raid the office back in March of 2014, was it for show to get him out?
No, it was not. One of the concerns that we had going into the case was where are his campaign records? If you remember, he was his own treasurer, I believe. And his records, we thought, may well be at the State House office. And so, we went into that morning with a very, with a careful plan, which was to talk to him and get a search warrant for his house first, and see, you know, where things were, what kind of records we were finding. But if we didn't find what we expected to find at that location, we knew we might have to go to the State House. And we ultimately got a search warrant to do just that. So it certainly wasn't for show. You know, we take, I like to think we take our responsibilities really seriously. And you know, the State House is not someplace you just walk into with a search warrant every day, obviously. So we needed to go there. We did go there. I'm not afraid to go there if we need to, but it's not for anything other than to get evidence.
Well, the interesting thing is that you talk about the year well spent putting the case together. While you're well spending the time to put the case together, the public is in a general, what?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Right?
Why is it taking so long?
Are you conscious of that?
Of course.
Conscious of that?
Sure. I get that. I get that. I have a father who's very interested in what I do for a living. I don't never tell him a thing.
Right,
it
Dad,
drives
I
him
can't tell you.
crazy.
Let's
Yeah,
talk baseball.
exactly. Well, you know, where is it? The guy's at the coffee shop. Where is it? And patience, patience. These things just take time. You know, corruption cases take time, and we really can't speak about them until we do something.
Were you as disgusted as I was that when he came back to office, between the time that you raided him and the time that you whacked him and then finally convicted him, that he got a standing ovation from the members of the General Assembly?
I found the response strange, honestly. Yeah, I did. And I've talked about this before. I understand. I've had friends, you know, over the course of my life who have made mistakes. And as a friend, I understand you want to stand with your friends. But I do think, though, that there's a way to do that to show support, but at the same time, in this context, not send the public a message that this is okay. And there have been other instances of that. There was another public official who was going to jail, and you know, sort of people or our people that we know or maybe contacts for us will sort of pass along this information. There was a send-off for this particular person the night before prison in a very public place. And I just don't think that sends the right message.
No. We'll talk more about the culture as we go here. I'm very concerned about this issue. Roll Walt's question on 38 Studios. Doesn't take very long.
Gordon, 38 Studios. Are you done talking about 38?
I'm not commenting on 38 Studios.
I found his demeanor. You know, Gordon is an interesting character. I'm sure you had some interesting moments as you were having your plea discussions with him. But his disposition changed completely on that 38 Studios thing. This has been on my craw, up my craw for a long time. To restate, you have no interest or no reason to be interested in what happened in 38 Studios? Yeah,
when that situation broke, boy, it goes back quite a ways now. I would say 3 years anyway, if my memory serves correctly.
Well, the vote was taken in 2010, and you know, Kurt Schilling went upside down a year or two later.
Yeah,
right?
12, I think, right? And so when that became very public, you know, that wasn't something, you know, 38 Studios going down the tubes or there being any issues about 38 Studios was not something that was on the law enforcement radar until it happened. And then when it happened, you know, we do what we often do in situations like that. You know, there are really two ways cases happen. You know, we get information, something's going on, the public doesn't know about it, we begin to look at it, we pull, we prod, we poke, and we get to where we think we're going to be. And many times the public doesn't know about it until we're there and something happens, like, you know, the raid on the State House, right? 38 Studios is something totally different. You know, everyone knows, in a sense, of what's happening in terms of 38 Studios is going under, what's going to happen with the money. So in situations like that, what I try to do is sit with our law enforcement partners and try to figure out, you know, are we going to do this together, or the FBI and the Attorney's Office going to do this with the State Police and the AG's office? Are we going to take the lead? Or is the state going to take the lead? And I remember very vividly having that exact kind of session out at State Police headquarters. And what we agreed in that context was, because the money was state money, it was a state pool of money that had been sent to 38 Studios. You know, the state really had a strong interest in that money. When I say the state, I mean both the State Police and the Attorney General's office. They really felt very strongly that this was an area that they really wanted to pursue if there was something to pursue. And there are, you know, we haven't had this situation yet, but if there was federal money, well, we've had it with federal money where, you know, I really feel like if it's HUD money or DOT money, then we're going to be the lead on that. Sure. We should be. So we have had that situation. In terms of politicians, you know, thankfully we haven't had any federal politicians that we've had issues with. But if there were, I would feel strongly about those cases involving federal officials, public or elected or appointed. So in this particular case, the Attorney General and the state police, you know, really wanted to really take the principal focus on that. And I thought that that was appropriate. So what we did, Dan, was we really focused on potential federal crimes. And in that particular instance, it was on bank fraud. There had been some loans made by some federally insured banking institutions to 38 Studios and to Kurt Schilling. And we really wanted to take a look to see whether or not there had been any fraud there. And what we found after several months of really looking very intently at that was that there weren't any charges to be made there. And then, like in many things, I've been kept to some extent apprised of what the state's been doing, but it's really sort of been in the ball's really in their court. Where it is, I can't really say.
Could you update me about what the state's been doing? Because I got to tell you something. As much admiration and respect as I have for you and your office, I've been very candid about how I do not share that same respect for our Attorney General's office. We've got a former state representative who hung with the boys at his everyday politics, who has a state police agency who I do have profound respect for and faith in, but there's a seemingly stalled, overdue reaction to what is obvious. When a legislature is literally fooled into voting for a loan guarantee program that immediately results in a $75 million loan guarantee program for a specific project that was obviously in the hopper, and all hell breaks loose, the diligence isn't done, and nobody really knew what happened. And then you take a look at some of the financial relationships that go on behind the scenes. It is an investigation overdue for at least a report out. I'm disgusted the General Assembly hasn't policed itself with subpoena power and done its own hearings on the matter. That's not your purview. But do you have a point of view as to whether the state ought to get in gear?
No, I really can't say, give a view on that.
Can or won't?
Well, I can, and I won't. I will say this, that I have, like you, I have tremendous confidence in the state police. We apparently, respectfully disagree about the Attorney General's office. They have been very good partners with us on a number of investigations.
I'm not necessarily damning the fine career folks, but it's a political office. Yours is an appointed office, it's a political office, and well, listen, I'm not here to preach to you. I got so many questions on other things, but the dissatisfaction and unfortunately the cloud that hangs over the state of Rhode Island, transactionally, even for new governors, new legislators who come in with capital projects, things that require taxpayer money. Where if you listen to my phone lines and the people at the bar who say, you know what, we're not going to support that, we're not going to spend another dime on anything, it's all because of the psychological trauma of what happened with that 38 Studios.
No, there's a hangover. I agree with you there.
Yeah.
But I'm not as pessimistic about the ability of the Attorney General and the Attorney General's office and the state police to get to a conclusion on that.
All right. We'll come back more with the U.S. Attorney on Fox and Friends. Stay with us.
We can't give public officials second chances. I believe in second chances for everybody else. I believe in it. The Department of Justice believes in it. We do a lot of work with our partners to try to get there for most defendants. But public officials, when you betray that public trust, you shouldn't come back again a second time.
That's a recurrent theme from you, that bite from newsmakers the other day. It is clear to me that Buddy Cianci's saga goes up your wazoo.
Sure, it does.
Big time.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it wasn't appropriate for me to speak last fall during the campaign. I mean, that's the wrong place for the U.S. Attorney to be during elections, a sitting U.S. Attorney.
Former U.S. attorneys did.
Yeah, and
you supported that.
And that's their role, and it was the proper place for them to do that. But I will say this, this is the public corruption amnesia that I think we have in this state. That, I'm all for, former politicians getting out of jail and going to work and living productive lives, and I wish them well. But you only get one chance to hold the public trust. You get one chance. If you betray that trust, you don't get a second chance. We can do a lot better than going back to people who violated it once and give them a second chance.
What are you more aggravated at? That he ran for mayor again or almost won?
Oh, I don't want to comment on sort of on the electorate and sort of their decision making.
Why?
But
you talk about the culture of corruption. Isn't it in many ways a bottom-up culture?
Well, I'll say this. As citizens, we need to make smart choices. And you're right. It's as voters, we decide who's going to hold elected office. You know, I don't want to tell people how to vote, but I do think this. You know, my personal view is that you know, these guys should not come back for a second bite. There are so many good people out there to hold public office. There are so many good people out there who will hold appointed office, and we shouldn't come back to the same place.
So tell me, what's your take, the public office aside? Buddy Cianci's been on the air since he came back from federal office. Reflection on my employer giving him a gig?
No, you know, look, if
my other employer.
Yeah, no, you know, I don't
doesn't bother you?
I don't take my I don't take my view in terms of holding elected office beyond that. Do I think it's ironic at times for someone in his position to comment on the sins of others, if you will? Yeah, somewhat.
Ironic or troubling?
Do I find it interesting when he or people in his position sort of talk about the court process in a way that sort of doesn't match in his own experience? Do I find that odd and ironic? Sure, but I have to admit, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about him. To me, he's a vehicle of reminding people of what we shouldn't do going forward, which is to give people who have violated the trust a second
No, but
chance.
I do believe that he's the standing example, at least, of some of these often comments you've made about second chances when it comes to electability. Now, I think you were also inspired maybe by a question of Gordon Fox's potential re-electability when he comes out of jail,
Sure.
anywhere from 31 to 36 months down
Sure.
the line.
And it's not limited to those two, or there's the 3 town councilors from North Providence. They shouldn't be public officials again. There's the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, John McCauley. He shouldn't be given another chance. There's Senator Christopher Maselli. He shouldn't be given a second chance. We can keep going back in
There
history.
are people watching the show going, go Peter, because
Well-
there's too long a list.
Well, you know, that is just in my 5 years as U.S. Attorney. And, you know, it's, you know, we need to change how we look at this. We look at public service, I think there's plenty of people who feel that way. I just think we need to be vocal about it.
You said some things at the courthouse steps, and I did whack you on the radio the other day, and I would never say, and I don't say anything about anybody I can't say to them. This I thought was 60 and a 55. Can we roll the thank you soundbite, please?
I think it's also incredibly important to recognize that the work that was done here by the people who actually did the work, and that is the agents and the detectives from the various agencies, the IRS, the state police, the FBI, and the prosecutors. You know, the fact is that if Jim Pitcavage and Troy Nero and Jim Brown and Bob Kramer and the prosecutors, Dulcie Donovan and Adi Goldstein and Patrick Youngs, had not worked over the course of not months but years to pull this information out and put it together, we wouldn't be in this situation where a corrupt Speaker of the House is gone and is going to federal prison. So I'm incredibly proud of their work and the partnership amongst the offices and agencies that brought us here today.
My reflection on that presentation is that it's a little bit too much, and here's why. I'm thinking that there's excellence throughout the Federal Bureau and the U.S. Attorney's Office, and we ought to take that as an understood. And I get uncomfortable when there's any sense, and I don't think it's your personality, which is why I think this is kind of weird or paradoxical in a way, that there's a sense of kind of, spiking the ball in the end zone type of thing from the federal agencies that we rely on to be so objective and dispassionate about what they're doing.
Yeah, let me explain why I'll make those kinds of statements. I'm the United States Attorney, and I have ultimate responsibility for where we go. But I also recognize that the work that's done in the trenches is not my own. You know, I'm here talking to you today. I'll be the subject of a favorable or an unfavorable editorial. But the work that's done in the trenches are by those people, and they do it largely out of the public eye. And it's my way of publicly thanking them. I see where you're coming from, but for me, it's nothing more than recognizing by name somebody I think did a really good job.
Yeah, it seems to me that and again, I won't belabor the point. I just think that's a party in the office, and I thank you one-on-one. Those public servants are there to be not personalities, but to be selfless public servants and put the bad guys away. And I would just suggest that there's a sensibility issue there that I think is important, because you don't cheerlead when you indict, that's for sure, and you're pretty close to the vest. And so I don't know how to punctuate this conversation, but I've said what I've had to say, and you've said what you've had to say.
Yes.
When we come back, where do we go from here, and both in the U.S. Attorney's Office and with the political culture around here? Stay with us.
But I need to work on whatever drove me to do this, not repeat the conduct. But first I have to, as I did today and I've done before, accept responsibility for it, apologize, as hollow as that may seem to a lot of Rhode Islanders, to the people of Rhode Island, to my family, friends, supporters, the people who believed in me. And because I've crushed them, and the compassionate person in me is bothered by that.
Check, really? So, did you have a reflection on the news coverage of this conviction and all of this emoting?
Not really, no. No, not really.
Means nothing to you.
You know, when you reach the end of the road, you know, I was pleased that Judge Lisi, you know, imposed a 3-year sentence. I thought that was the right sentence. I wanted to thank everybody for a job well done, and as I know that bothers you. But we were prepared to move on. It's almost the next case.
Not significantly. I want you to understand that.
I understand.
Well, so talk to me about this whole syndrome. Right. I'm really, really sorry. I should have known what I can't believe I did it. I don't know what I was thinking for years on end, using political contributions. Right. You know, sorry they're caught. Sorry about what they did. I know you're concerned, as a guy that watches this stuff all the time, that the message is sent and clear. There's no way of knowing, right? Or is there something that indicates in the culture that would give you a sense of confidence, and should give me and the listeners and viewers a sense of confidence that things are changing around here?
Well, I do think that the legislation up there that requires bank statements to be filed helps. That helps.
Gee, what a heavy lift.
I know, but
you know?
at least it's
How
something
about
we didn't have
Fox
before.
say, did you hear what he said as well in that scrum? You know, what can we change? Well, perhaps we should eliminate electronic banking for the legislators, because the tendency to be able to hit a button versus go to see a teller might have been the difference between right and wrong. Okay?
That would be inconvenient for many of us to eliminate online banking.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Well, I would suggest, my answer to my own question would be that they ought to run some 38 Studios hearings, that there should be some indications that there's a real understanding that there's a moral fabric that seems to be missing, and that allegedly Rhode Islanders want. Do you ever get concerned that Rhode Islanders just get a big kick out of this whole thing?
No, I don't think that at all. I think Rhode Islanders, take this very seriously, and I think it's fair to point out that there are many people elected in appointed office who are doing really good work, right? You know, we're painting with sort of a broad brush here. I think what's important to come out of these cases is that, that where people go off the rails, we're going to find it. We may not find it in the first 6 months or the first year. I like to think eventually we're going to find it. And I don't think I think the fact that we found so many in just 5 years as being U.S. Attorney is really an indication that eventually we'll find it. I hope that sends a message to people who are off the rails to get them back on, or might go off the rails. And I think some people don't need the message.
Who's next?
I can't tell you that. Who knows?
Good to see you.
Good to see you, David.
Thanks very much. One more thing. Stay with me. I'm glad that a U.S. attorney is accessible, at least after the conviction, which is good stuff. It's the way it works. Thanks to Peter Neronha for showing up. Tomorrow we are going to talk some golf amidst the news of the day. The Northeast Amateur is in town again, of course, and we'll focus on that and more. See you on the radio at noon on WPRO. Good night.